Welcome to part 3 of a 4-part series on the economic ties that shape nations. In a wave of historical reckoning, some have taken to the streets, desecrating and toppling statues of slave owners and colonial figures, symbols of a dark and oppressive past. While these acts are often framed as gestures of solidarity with the descendants of colonized peoples, critics argue they are merely symbolic, emotionally charged moves that do more to erase cultural and historical records than to address the underlying injustices. These controversial figures, once revered as heroes and celebrated in their countries, are now at the center of a polarizing debate. The dismantling of their statues is seen by some not as a path to healing or understanding, but as a superficial response that fails to grapple with the deep-rooted, systemic legacy of colonialism and slavery. This discourse underscores the complexity of reconciling with the past, where the demolition of physical monuments clashes with the enduring monuments built in the collective memory and national narratives of former colonial powers. This movement to remove statues and rename institutions, while seen by many as a step towards moral rectification, is perceived by others as a form of historical amnesia, a destruction of the very evidence that bears witness to past crimes. The physical remnants of colonialism and slavery, for all their painful symbolism, also serve as stark reminders of historical truths. By erasing these symbols from public spaces, some argue that we risk sanitizing history, removing the uncomfortable yet crucial markers that remind societies of their collective past misdeeds. This perspective views the toppling of statues not as an act of justice, but as an oversimplified response that potentially obliterates the opportunity for reflection, education, and a deeper understanding of the complex, intertwined histories of oppressors and the oppressed. In the heat of these emotionally charged moments, the destruction of historical symbols can be likened to a criminal destroying evidence. While the intent may be to erase the pain associated with these relics, the act itself could be seen as more insidious than the decision to let them stand. The criminal who destroys evidence in a public spectacle not only erases the crime but also diminishes the opportunity for collective reckoning and understanding. By removing these tangible reminders of a painful past, society risks losing the threads of history that are essential for learning, for preventing the recurrence of such injustices, and for ensuring that future generations comprehend the full scope and gravity of what transpired. This kind of erasure does not heal. Rather, it creates a void where truth once stood, potentially allowing the dangerous seeds of revisionism and denial to take root. In this turbulent narrative, there's a nuanced subplot involving individuals who, though not directly linked as victims or perpetrators of colonialism, are instrumentalized by former colonial powers. These powers, it's argued, manipulate public sentiment, using these acts of statue destruction to undermine legitimate and serious efforts at reparations. By orchestrating or condoning these dramatic displays of violence against historical symbols, they divert attention from the more profound, systemic issues at hand. This tactic effectively muddies the waters of discourse, shifting focus from the pressing need for tangible, structured reparations to the spectacle of toppling statues. In doing so, they not only evade deeper accountability but also exploit the very individuals they claim to support, using their actions to perpetuate a narrative that serves to maintain the status quo rather than to challenge it. This strategic redirection of the public's emotional energy and attention creates a smokescreen, one that obscures the path to genuine reconciliation and justice. In the intricate dance of post-colonial relations, another strategy emerges from the playbook of former colonial powers, the narrative of convenient amnesia. We don't have a memory of this history, they profess, while simultaneously claiming, we are doing our best to incorporate this into our national memory. This rhetoric serves as another insult to the victims of colonialism, trivializing their suffering and the systematic exploitation they endured. It's a subtle yet potent form of gaslighting, implying that the absence of colonial atrocities from the collective memory of the oppressors somehow diminishes their reality. Concurrently, there's the gesture of repatriating cultural heritage, often framed as a magnanimous act of reconciliation. We've started returning the artifacts we took, the former colonial powers announce, positioning this as the pinnacle of their reparative efforts. However, this action, while symbolically significant, skirts around the crux of the matter. It's a token gesture that falls drastically short of addressing the deep economic wounds inflicted by centuries of exploitation. It's the easy way out, a way to appear benevolent without engaging in the real, challenging work of economic restitution. And then there's the deflection, the pivot to global issues like climate change. Let's focus on the pressing matters that affect us all, they suggest, subtly steering the conversation away from the uncomfortable topic of reparations. While climate change is undeniably a critical global challenge, invoking it in this context serves as a diversionary tactic. It shifts the spotlight, diluting the urgency and legitimacy of calls for comprehensive, no-strings-attached economic reparations that numerous academic studies have shown to be not just morally justified but economically imperative. Each of these strategies, whether it's feigned historical amnesia, symbolic repatriation of artifacts, or redirecting attention to global issues, is a thread in the larger tapestry of evasion. They are tactics employed to sustain the status quo, to avoid confronting the uncomfortable truths of colonialism and the profound, lasting economic reparations it necessitates. These maneuvers, while subtle, are powerful in their capacity to undermine genuine efforts at restitution, further entrenching the disparities wrought by centuries of exploitation. The narrative of incapacity or slow-paced progress in addressing the legacies of colonialism becomes even less believable when contrasted with the swift and decisive actions taken in other international contexts. A case in point is the response to the Ukraine conflict, where the mobilization of resources and coordination among former colonial powers were strikingly efficient. Assets belonging to Russia were rapidly identified, frozen, or seized in a concerted effort to exert economic pressure. This stark discrepancy in response times underscores a disconcerting reality: when the political will and vested interests align, actions can be swift and impactful. The contrast with the sluggish and often symbolic actions taken to address historical injustices and economic reparations for former colonies lays bare a selective efficiency, further eroding the credibility of the narrative that more cannot be done to right the wrongs of the past. The juxtaposition of these scenarios paints a picture of selective engagement and prioritization. It raises critical questions about the real barriers to addressing the economic aftermath of colonialism. If the same level of urgency, resource mobilization, and international cooperation that was evident in the freezing of assets post the Ukraine conflict were applied to the cause of economic reparations for former colonies, the landscape of restitution might look starkly different. This disparity not only highlights the inconsistency in international responses, but also amplifies the call for a genuine, concerted effort to address the legacies of colonialism, free from the constraints of selective political agendas and half-hearted symbolic gestures. As we navigate these complex narratives and contrasting scenarios, it becomes increasingly clear that the path to true reconciliation and restitution is not merely obstructed by logistical or financial constraints but is fundamentally a matter of political will and moral commitment. The stories we've unraveled today serve as a stark reminder of the need for an honest reckoning with our collective past, a commitment to righting historical wrongs, and a collective effort towards building a future founded on genuine justice and equality. Only then can we hope to close the chapters of history that continue to haunt the present and pave the way for a more equitable world. Another subtle but pervasive strategy deployed by former colonial powers to maintain the status quo is the narrative of historical amnesia. We don't have memory of this history, they claim, as if the systemic exploitation and atrocities were mere footnotes easily erased from the collective consciousness. This stance is often coupled with insincere pledges of incorporating this into our national memory, a statement that adds insult to injury, trivializing the profound and lasting impact of colonialism on its victims. In a gesture that is often portrayed as an act of reconciliation, there's the strategy of repatriating cultural heritage. We've started returning the artifacts we took, proclaim the former colonial powers, presenting this action as the zenith of their reparative efforts. While the return of cultural artifacts is a step forward, it's a mere drop in the ocean compared to the economic reparations that are truly warranted. The gesture, though symbolically significant, sidesteps the broader issue of economic restitution, offering cultural reconciliation as a substitute for the more challenging, substantive economic reparations that are due. Furthermore, there's the strategic shift of focus to other pressing issues.